The chase is on. Ovechkin, now 33 goals back of Gretzky's record thanks to 7 goals in his last 8 games and 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points in his last 4. So he is red hot right now. You're going to want exposure to him, and I have someone available on the wire, which we'll get to later on in the video, so stay tuned for that. But to start it off, let's do what we always do and take a look at the schedule for Week 6. 49 games this week, again, same as last week, and pretty clean spread. So you've got 6 on Monday, 7 Tuesday, 5 Wednesday, Thursday a little heavier with 10, Friday with 5, Saturday the heaviest at 12 games, and then Sunday with 4. So plenty to choose from this week. There's 7 teams that have 4 games this week. Not all schedules are created equal. You do have the best schedule this week is Vegas. They've got the perfect Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. So in theory, this is 4 light nights, but I count anything under 6 as a light night, so that's why it says 3 over here. But basically, 4 light nights. A difficult matchup here against Carolina, but an easier game against the Ducks. A slightly easy-ish game against Utah compared to some of the other opponents that they've got. The Caps, 9-3 right now. They're red hot, so these 2 games at the front and the back of the week are going to be difficult, but Vegas is a very good team. So we'll get into all of their ads in just a minute. Pittsburgh, I would categorize as the second best schedule. They've got Dallas. That's a tough game. They've got Detroit, which is winnable. And then they've got 2 very winnable games here, the 500 Columbus Blue Jackets, and then the just slightly improved San Jose Sharks. Not great, but still they did get Celebrini back, so that will be a little bit more of an interesting game. However, the Pittsburgh Penguins are relatively fledgling right now. They're not picking up points. They are falling behind in the Metro, so they need these wins badly. Now, Seattle has another pretty decent schedule. The only difference here is the Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday heavy night games. This is probably one where it's not that heavy, and you're playing against Columbus, so that's favorable. You've got this matchup, which is also favorable. This matchup should be favorable, especially if you own Decord. The Islanders still struggling to score. This is going to be a tougher game, the second night of a back-to-back against the Rangers at home, so that is favorable that all 4 of these games are at home. Carolina, they've got 2 road games to start against Vegas and Utah. Then they come back home, and then they've got Ottawa and St. Louis on the weekend back-to-back. You've got Vancouver, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday heavy with some winnable games here. 3 of their last 4 games, actually all of these games are definitely winnable. But especially the back end, you've got Chicago and the fledgling Nashville Predators, who are also on this list. We'll get to them in a second. Same type of Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday split for St. Louis. A couple of harder games. I'm not sure how difficult we want to expect the Boston games to be. Buffalo is improving. They spanked the Rangers the other night. That was disappointing for me. But this 3-game road trip, 3 and 4 nights, all on the road, is difficult for St. Louis, which is why they're towards the bottom of this list. And then you also have Nashville. They're on the West Coast road trip. They've got Colorado on the road. They're 3 and 4 on the Western Canadian road trip. Oilers, Flames, and Canucks. So that's not easy at all, despite the fact that some of these teams the Oilers are below 500. Flames are getting back down to what they should be in terms of off to that hot start, kind of trending downward since then. You also have 3 games and 3 light nights from the Caps, as you can see over here. So we will touch on a couple of those guys later in the video. The worst schedules this week, you've got Tampa Bay, who doesn't play until Thursday. You've got Utah with 2 games, Minnesota with 2 games, Chicago with 2, and Anaheim with 2. I wouldn't expect you guys to own much off of Chicago and Anaheim, but if you own a bunch of Minnesota players, Tampa Bay guys, you're going to want to add some volume off the waiver wire. So let's get into how you can do that by looking at the Vegas Golden Knights. As we look at the Vegas Golden Knights, the first thing you notice when looking at this graph is Mark Stone way at the top, 21 points in 13 games, 8 power play points. The shots and hits are cut off, but I assure you they're good. But he's day-to-day, and Jack Eichel is the other player that's driving a lot of their offense, 22 points in 14 games, so you're going to want exposure to him. Now, you get that through Barbashev. He's owned up pretty much, but 16 points in 14 games, nice shots and hits volume there. Olofsson with 3 points in 4 games occasionally gets some power play time, but if you want that power play exposure, especially to Eichel, Pavel Dorofeyev, 8 goals, 11 points in 14 games, 4 power play points, 2.9 shots per game, and 7 points in his last 6 with 3 power play points. So he's getting it done. Tomas Hertl's a relatively complete option. Shot volume a little low, but hits are there. 12 points in 14 games. But William Karlsson is 37% owned by comparison. He's 6 points in 6 games after missing some time. 6 points, 1 power play point, even though he's line 3 and power play 2. But you have Nick Waugh filling in on the top line with Mark Stone out. So he's been pretty good, 6 points in his last 6 games. If you're looking for hits, Keegan Colasar, almost 3 hits per game, 8 points in 14 is not bad either. Their defense has been really good thus far. Pietrangelo, 13 points. Theodore with 11 and 13. And then Noah Hannafin lately picking it up, 8 points in 14 games. A lot of those coming in the last week or so. A couple goals last week. So he's been really good. So the Vegas Golden Knights have a lot to offer. And they do have some options available on their power play unit. So Pavel Dorofeyev, he's the best ad for this week, 25% owned, up from about 16% last week. And he's a guy that has always been on that power play one, at least this year, but he's been getting more looks lately, and he scores a ton of goals. He's got a really good release, 5 goals in his last 6 games, 3 power play points. He is power play 1, and he's been cemented there. So they like to feed him on that back door. He's directly across from Eichel, so you're getting those passes. 92nd percentile in shot volume, 88th percentile in power play points, 97th in goal production, over a half a goal per game, and he pretty much scores every game or every other game. So he's had a couple of games, maybe 1 game per week where he doesn't put up any points, but pretty much every other game he's going to do something for you. So he's your top ad this week. Now, if you can't get him, there are some other options. So we've got William Karlsson. He's 37% owned after coming back from injury, a point per game, assist heavy, but he is still pretty reliable with that assist volume. 2.1 shots is not bad. He was shooting a little bit heavier earlier on. 1.3 blocks is pretty good as well. And he does get some power play production, even though he is power play 2 right now. They do use that second unit, and they do have enough talent to spread there. But with that said, the power play 1 unit with Mark Stone does look a little bit different. So you've got Nick Waugh, center right wing, only 2% owned, but he's been playing so well that Bruce Cassidy put him up on the top line and on the top power play, 6 points in his last 6 games with a power play point there. Same type of thing. If we look at his hub, William Karlsson, a little bit better point per game numbers than Nick Waugh, and a little bit better shot volume as well. And the power play numbers, this is recent that he got put on this power play, so that's why the numbers are a little bit lower. But 1.14 hits is nice if you're in a league with hits coverage, or if you're in a categories league and you're looking for that, or a points league where you get some point weighting for that. That's a nice floor. He is dual position eligible, which is not something that these other 2 guys can say. So this is a little bit better of a play, especially in a deeper league, to get that line assignment, but it is line assignment dependent. So if Mark Stone comes back, I would assume he becomes less productive and less relevant in certain fantasy leagues. But if you're in a 16-teamer, this is definitely your best option this week. As we turn now to the Penguins, you can take a look at their team on the right here. Malkin leading the way, so is Sidney Crosby. We've heard about Crosby, but Malkin, 18 points in 16 games, 5 power play points, 2.3 shots is a little bit low, but Crosby, 16 points in 16 games, 6 power play points, 3 shots, and 1.1 hits per game. So he's vintage Sid. And if you want exposure to him, Rickard Rakell, 11 points in 16, 6 goals, 5 assists, 2 power play points, 2.8 shots, 1.6 hits per game. So a nice peripheral floor there. And then we've also got Brian Rust, who does usually play with Sidney Crosby. Right now he's with Evgeny Malkin. He's only played 9 games. He's always injured in and out of the lineup. That's the only downside. But 3.2 shots, 1.0 hits per game. And he's got 3 points in his last 4 with 12 shots. So he is getting that shot volume. So these are your 2 best options. And as we take a look at their hubs, Rickard Rakell, a little bit lower point per game ceiling, but the goal volume is nice, 88th percentile there. Shot volume, 2.75 shots is really nice to see. And then the power play numbers are pretty much around average in terms of guys who get exposure. And then you've got 1.56 hits per game, which is nice as well, and a couple blocks here and there. So he's going to fill that out. If you're in a categories league with these categories, he's going to give you a nice floor, even if he's not producing offensively, and he is dual position eligible, which is going to help as well. Center, right wing, he's 34% owned. So he might be your best option just based on ownership, positional flexibility, shot volume, and goals. But the more consistent producer offensively is Brian Rust, 3.22 shots per game is a little bit higher. Power play numbers are a little bit higher in general as well. He still does hit about a hit per game. Point per game is a little bit lower, but he's been in and out of the lineup, so the points have started to come lately. But he just returned from injury, so you do have to keep an eye on that. Make sure that you're paying attention to when he is in or out of the lineup based on injury. You're going to have to fill in with somebody else if he's out of the lineup, obviously. And he's a little bit higher percentage at 42, so he may or may not be there in a 12-team league. As we look at the Seattle Kraken, there's a number of options here. So you've got Jared McCann, who's their top scorer, 17 points in 15 games. He's center left wing, dual eligible, 4 power play points, 2.2 shots. The D are very complete right now. 3 shots, almost 2 hits per game for Brandon Montour. He's been the power play quarterback in the absence of Vince Dunn. 3 points in 4 games, but he is still out for another 3 weeks. So keep that on the back of your mind as you are potentially looking at bringing him back into your lineup. Now, as we look at the more complete players, twisting it this way, Riker Evans is your defensive add this week. 8 points in 15 games, 1.8 hits, 1.7 blocks per game, and a couple shots there with some decent point totals for a guy who was a depth guy but now a top pair defenseman. You also have Chandler Stevenson getting hot lately, 5 assists in his last 6 games, 4 power play points, but 4 of those assists and 3 of those power play points coming in 1 game, so keep that in mind. So Matty Beniers might be your best option, 16% owned, 8 points in his last 8 games, line 1, power play 2, and he's been relatively low in terms of shot volume, kind of like the rest of these guys. You also have Jaden Schwartz, who I didn't list here, but 2% owned, 8 points in 15 games for him. He's on line 2. Jordan Eberle would have been the add earlier in the season, but he has cooled off mightily. Only 1 power play point, 6 goals on the year. All of those came in the first couple weeks of the season. So let's look at Eli Tolvanen, who is on power play 1, dual eligible left wing, right wing. 2 goals and 16 hits in his last 6 games. We'll take a look at that when we look at his player hub with all of the hits volume that you're getting out of him. Brandon Tanev down there, he scored 2 goals last night. So he potentially getting back to form with the hits volume and the goal scoring, similar to Tolvanen. Now, as we take a look at these guys' hubs, the first guy we'll look at is Beniers. He's been a little bit lower in terms of point per game numbers than what you'd like to see. He came into the league close to a point per game player, and he hasn't really gotten back to that since. He had his sophomore slump. This last 8-game stretch has been pretty decent for him, though. He's line 1, power play 2. Shot volume a little low for my taste. No power play points yet. Not much hitting or shot blocking, a little bit of shot blocking, but overall you're getting him for his line assignment and exposure to those minutes that you're potentially looking for in a 4-game week with some volume, and he has been heating up a little bit, so that is nice to see. But another option for you is Chandler Stevenson, who's more of a veteran player, a little bit better in terms of his power play numbers, 91st percentile there, again with that 3-assist game, or a 4-assist, 3 power play point game. That definitely will bump that metric up, and that is also 89th percentile assists for Chandler Stevenson. He's a guy who might have taken a little bit of time to get going after coming over from Vegas. So now that he's starting to find a home, he's on line 2 and power play 1. So that power play 1 exposure is the main reason you would pick him up, and he's less owned. So 6%, he should even be there for you in a 14 or a 16 team league, depending on some of your league mates and how astute they've been. But one other guy that I wanted to mention is Eli Tolvanen. Because of this hits volume, 2.4 hits per game is really nice. He has in the past been more of a shooter and a goal scorer, but the goal numbers are not bad either. 2 goals, 16 hits in his last 6 games. So he's been kind of doing it in bunches, not a consistent goal scorer, but he is a consistent hitter. So you can add that if you're in a bangers league, and he's 9% owned. So a dual position eligible guy. All of these guys are owned up. Are ownable in a 12-team league. They also have other options like Bjorkstrand. They bring back Daniel Sprong. He's available. As I mentioned, Jaden Schwartz is 2% owned. A ton of options, but they spread out their offense. So it's kind of like Dallas, a little bit less prolific in the sense that you don't know who's going to step up on any given night. So with that said, if you're looking for volume this week and you're looking for a defenseman, hits and blocks D. Riker Evans, top pair minutes right now, a goal, 2 assists, 15 hits, 16 blocks in his last 7 games. You can see here 87th percentile in blocks, 78th in hits. Shot volume a little bit low, but the offensive numbers are not bad for a guy who's starting to get some top pair minutes. Wasn't really used to that in the past, and now stepping up in the absence of Vince Dunn and making that impact. So again, 3 more weeks for Vince Dunn. That could make Evans a little bit more ownable for the next 3 weeks. But then once Dunn comes back, I would assume Evans' role starts to decline just a little bit. Now, as we get to the best of the rest for the forward group, this is the 3D scatter plot, and this is kind of what you can see in terms of completeness versus points per game average and whatnot. So apparently the most complete player is Connor Garland, 11 points in 12 games, 2.2 shots per game, almost a little bit more than half a hit per game, half a block per game, 3 power play points. So he is one of the better options in terms of that. But Ryan Donato, I did want to mention him, 3 position eligible. He is red hot right now. He's got 8 points, 27 shots, 17 hits in his last 7 games, 2.5 shots, 2.3 hits per game on the season. Good line assignment, top 6 in Chicago, but they only have 2 games this week. I did want to add him here because he's red hot and 3 position eligible, which is very rare, but he is a guy that you're not going to pick up for volume this week. You could go to DeBrusk, 7 points in 12 games total, 2 hits per game average on the season, but he's been a little bit hotter of late. 3 goals in his last 3 games, 9 shots and 4 hits. And with the injury to Brock Besser, Garland and DeBrusk should be elevated in the lineup. Maybe even Kiefer Sherwood gets an elevated look in the lineup. 6.6 hits per game on here, about 7 hits per game on the season. So what you're looking for out of him is just crazy hits volume, a little bit of offensive production, 7 points in 12 games, and an elevated role, maybe in the middle 6 with the absence of Besser. Now, if you're looking for some of these other guys, you've got Protas, who's got 12 points in 13 games, 1.7 shots is a little bit low, so that's why he's a little bit further back to the right. And same thing with the power play points, no power play points, but he is getting top-line exposure in Washington, and they are on fire. Same type of top-line exposure for Jack Roslovic. He's got 10 points in 12 games. 2.8 shots per game is pretty good, actually. And all of these points are, almost all of them are goals. 9 goals. So 9 of his 10 points coming with goal production, and he's dual position eligible, which is nice. And he's only 10% owned. So now we'll take a up first. We've got Roslovic, 99th percentile in terms of goals. 9 goals in 12 games is elite level, but he is shooting at around 27% right now, and he is line assignment dependent. So I would caution you with that. There's no telling if this is going to continue, but the shot volume is nice, 2.75 shots per game on the season. So he is shooting the puck. He's obviously scoring at a crazy rate. That should come down, but over the next week, can you potentially ride this hot streak? There's not a lot else in terms of peripheral floor, so you're taking a little bit of a risk. That's probably why his ownership is. On to the Canucks ads, we've got Kiefer Sherwood, the hits specialist. He's obviously the number 1 hitter in the league at almost 6.5 or plus 6.5 hits per game, 100th percentile there. He's ahead of even Jeremy Lauzon, who I have, who is in that 5+ range. But Lauzon obviously blocking shots as well, and you can use him as a defenseman, which is a little bit more preferable, but you do get dual position eligibility out of Sherwood. He's got 2 goals, 1 assist, 35 hits in his last 6 games. He's had hits games with 10 hits per game plus, which is insane to think about. And he goes in spurts in terms of goal scoring and offensive production. 7 points in 12 games is not bad at all. The shot volume is not bad. 2 shots per game for a guy who you're mainly picking up just for hits is going to be nice. So in a points league where you're getting a point per hit, this guy's very valuable. And in a categories league, he's a must own. At 25% ownership and dual position eligibility, he's definitely going to be an impact player for your fantasy team if you have hits in the lineup. So if you don't, and if you're looking for a little bit more offensive production, you've got Connor Garland, who may get an elevated role with the Besser injury. 0.92 points per game is nice. 0.33 goals per game, 85th percentile there, 4 goals in 12. The power play points, 3 power play points in 12 games is not bad, and the shot volume could be worse, 2.25 shots per game. So pretty, consistently above average in all of these offensive categories. He's a little bit below a point per game, which is not bad at all for a guy who's a middle 6 forward. He is single position eligible, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points in his last 3 games. So he is heating up right now, only 14% owned. So he is probably there for you in a 12-teamer. And in a week where they're going to get 4 games this week, there is 1 back-to-back, but this could be a pickup, especially if he gets that top line assignment. But if he doesn't, you do also have Jake DeBrusk, who is also heating up. So he's got 3 goals in his last 3 games, 9 shots, and 4 hits in those 3 games as well. The hits have been there all season long, 2 hits per game. Shot volume a little low for my taste at 1.83. Power play numbers are okay, but not great. 2 power play points in 12. 7 points on the year is basically the same as Sherwood. You're getting 4 hits per game less, 4.5 hits per game less than Sherwood, but you do get a little bit higher offensive upside. He has had seasons in the past 35 plus goals, so he is capable of more than this. If he does want to get to those numbers offensively, he does need to shoot a little bit more though. So he should be there for you, maybe in a 10-teamer, maybe in a 12-team league, but he is dual position eligible and he is red hot right now, and people are aware that Besser is now down with an injury, so this would favor DeBrusk, I would think, a little bit more than Garland just because of what he's done in the past with his track record. Isn't necessarily hot right now. He's not necessarily putting up the numbers, but he's got 3.2 goals below expected, so he should break out any moment now. He hasn't been shooting a ton in the last couple of games, but he was shooting a lot earlier on. But you're also getting top line and top power play exposure out of Brayden Schenn. He is center left wing dual eligible, which is also nice to see. Only 15% owned. So that's mainly the case here. You've got a decent shot volume for the season, 2.43 shots per game. The hits floor is going to be nice, 2 hits per game and almost 1 block per game. So if you're in a categories league and you're looking for a guy who's going to give you a nice floor with some good exposure for the top power play and the top line minutes, etc., this is a guy who hasn't broken out yet. So sometimes it is important to look at that metric, that goals below expected, to see who's getting the chances but not cashing in, as opposed to guys who are red hot who may cool off. So I did that last week. I can't remember which player I did it with. I believe it was Quentin Byfield, picking him up in the Creators League, and he broke out in a big way this past week. So I'm trying that again with Brayden Schenn this week. Might go out and pick him up in my Categories League. But that would be a nice league format to own him in, with these hits and shot volume and then that exposure to the top power play. But if you want excellent line assignment exposure and a hot team, red hot team, Alexei Protas playing on the top line with Dylan Strome and Alex Ovechkin. He doesn't put up a ton of shots. He's not getting any power play time or points. The hits and blocks are extremely low, but with that said, 12 points in 13 games, 5 goals, 7 assists, and that line assignment is why you would own Protas. He's also red hot, 8 points, 4 goals, 4 assists in his last 7 games, only 15% owned, if I can read that correctly. So that's really good ownership percentage, dual eligible, just like Brayden Schenn, and arguably a better team exposure than Schenn with the red-hot Washington Capitals. They only have 3 games next week, but they're all light nights. So that's the reason why he's on this list as well. And as I mentioned before, Donato is playing only 2 games next week, but I did want to mention him here. He is red-hot. 5 goals, 3 assists, 8 points, a power play point, 27 shots, and 17 hits in his last 7 games. The hits have been there all year, 2.31 hits per game, 2.54 shots per game, and the goal production, 96th percentile with 7 goals in 13 games. He's a middle 6 guy who's got an elevated role in the lineup, and he's been making it count. As he, I believe he missed a couple games earlier in the season, comes back, finds some chemistry with the top line, and then gets some top power play exposure as well. He is 3 position eligible, which is also worth noting. Again, only 2 games next week, but if you're looking for a nightly stream, this would be a guy to go to because you can fit him in even on those heavy nights with that 3 position eligibility. Now, same with the forwards. These D are mostly playing 4 games this week. If not, they're guys like the Washington guys like Sandin at the bottom there, playing 3 games on 3 light nights. But we'll start it off with Dmitry Orlov, who is red hot right now. 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points in his last 6 games. So he's been taking a little bit more of an offensive role. He's only 16% owned. Now, with that said, 1.42 hits per game is not bad. 1.5 shots is a little bit low. Offensive production, not bad at all. 8 points in 12 games for a guy who's not their power play quarterback. You've got Goss to spare, and then you've got Burns as a potential secondary option. But Orlov is making it count 5-on-5. He is scoring some goals. He does have that cannon from the blue line, so this would be a decent option just to find a guy who's red hot and continue that into next week with 4 games for next week for the Carolina Hurricanes. But if you want to add one of the other hottest defensemen in the league and you're in a 10 or 8 team league, you've got Colton Parayko. So he's got 4 goals, 5 points in his last 6, along with 13 shots and 13 blocks. So the blocks coverage is really good. It's usually there for Parayko. 98th percentile, 2.64 blocks per game, 1.5 hits, 2 shots per game. So you're getting a nice floor here. If you're in a categories league, this guy should be owned up by now, but if he's still available, go out and grab him. 9 points in 14 games on the season. The hits, blocks, and shots are really nice in terms of getting a little bit of each of those without the offensive production to match. But right now he is hot and he is making those offensive chances count. So that is worth noting, but he is 53% owned, so he may not be there for you. Now, in a week where you're getting 4 games, you may just want to focus on volume for your peripherals, things like hits, blocks, and so with that, you have these 2 options. You've got Luke Schenn, who is a 3.5 hits per game guy, 98th percentile there, 1.5 blocks per game, and he's been doing a lot of that lately. 29 hits, 13 blocks in his last 7 games. He's only 7% owned, so he's basically a light version of Jeremy Lauzon. So if you look at Lauzon, same team, same struggling offense, but that's not really going to matter when you're looking at hits and blocks volume. 4.93 hits per game for Lauzon, second in the NHL behind Kiefer Sherwood, who we mentioned earlier. 1.21 blocks, so a little bit less blocks than a guy like Schenn, but a lot more hits than Schenn, about 1.4 hits per game more than Schenn. But even with that, in the last 7 games, they've been very close. 31 hits, 12 blocks for Lauzon, and he is more owned up. So if you can't get him, you can probably go out and get Luke Schenn. Both of these guys have absolutely no offensive production to speak of, so they pretty much will only do these 2 things for you. So if you're in a categories league and you're looking to boost those 2 categories specifically, this would be the reason to grab these guys. If you're in a points league that weighs hits per game or hits or blocks as 1 point, that would be a case to pick these guys up. But if you're looking for offensive production, definitely don't look that way. Doing that, you might want to pick up Rasmus Sandin, 5% ownership. He's got 4 points, 12 hits, and 21 blocks in his last 7 games. So with Chychrun out, now Chychrun is back today, so this could impact your decision going forward. But Sandin might have just taken that opportunity and gotten a little bit hotter, started to produce a little bit more offensively. So you can see 4 of his 6 points coming in the last 7 games. 2.62 blocks is really nice if you're in a categories league with that category. 1.38 hits per game is not bad. Shots are extremely low. I don't like to see that at all. So this was a very difficult ad for me, but I did pick him up, and he did produce a little bit, scoring a goal the other night. So take that for what it's worth. But at 5%, he could be there for you in a. Lastly, we'll take a look at the goaltending, and here's Kevin Lankinen for all you people who have been requesting this. Finally got this fixed, and we've got an updated graph here. So this is showing each of the past couple of weeks of data. So you can see Lankinen trending in the right direction, stayed at around a 77, now up to an 84 on the goaltending hub. 7 wins in 9 games, 923 save percentage, 2.1 goals against. Team defense is pretty dang good, 91st percentile there for Vancouver. It will be interesting to see what happens when Demko comes back, but for the time being, Lankinen is the 4th best goaltender on the hub. He is relatively owned up at 67% though, so he's probably not there for you. So who can you grab that's been trending in the right direction and heating up right now? So we'll start with Jonas Korpisalo. Now, if you've been paying attention, Boston is struggling, obviously, and Swayman has been struggling as well. So they've been giving some starts to Korpisalo, and he's been making the most of them. So you can see this huge jump from November 2nd all the way up to November 9th, up to a 50 now, and that is because he's got 2 wins in his last 4 starts, 194 goals against, and a 932 save percentage with a shutout in that time span. So that's going to increase his numbers. He was off to a slow start, so that's why his overall season numbers are a little bit low, but as I mentioned, 2 of those 3 wins on the season coming in the last 4 starts, that shutout coming in that time span as well. Team defense is this is unexpected for Boston to be this low in terms of team defense. I would expect them to increase this as time goes on. They do have the pieces. I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. Jim Montgomery's got to get some chemistry going in terms of their defensive composure and getting some offensive lines to produce other than Pasternak. But with that said, if they're going to give some starts to Korpisalo, he's 14% owned, so you might want to scoop him up, especially if you have Swayman and you're looking for some more starts. Now, not necessarily the best team exposure at the moment, but you are getting a pretty decent performance out of Korpisalo night in and night out. Another guy that I wanted to touch on, he is day-to-day, but this is Sam Ersson. I mentioned him last week. You can see his number dropping. That's basically because he didn't really start that much. but 3 wins in his last 4 starts, 1.5 goals against, 940 save percentage, and a shutout. And a relief. He didn't get the shutout, but he put up 8 saves on 8 shots in a relief appearance, but he has been day-to-day, so he hasn't been playing lately. Fedotov had a nice game the other day. He's 5% owned, but he is a little bit more of a wild card, whereas Ersson at 18% owned should be their starter. And Philadelphia is starting to turn it around. You can see their Team D up to 52nd percentile. He is a little bit below expected, but we'll see how that trends as their defense improves and as their overall team game improves. So 18% for Ersson. He should be available in a 12-team league. Another guy I wanted to talk about, he's a little bit higher ownership. Let's see if I can find him here, and that is Cam Talbot. He's up at number 12. On the goaltending hub, so he's taken a nice jump. It was Alex Lyon to start the season, but he started to fade off a little bit, and Talbot has started to heat up, going from a 51 to a 69 on the goalie hub, 6.08 above expected. Really good numbers there. The Team D is not what you like to see, 21st percentile, but 926 save percentage on the year, 2.4 goals against with a shutout, and it's been happening lately. 2 wins in his last 3 starts, 3 wins in his last 5 starts, and across those 5 games, 2.0 goals against, 933 save percentage. So he's heating up. He's taking control of the net. He is 59% owned, but if you're in a shallow league and you're looking for a starter, he could be available on the wire. Again, not the best team exposure, but he is playing really well, given the fact that he has kind of taken that number 1 role. Now, if you're in a points league with 1 point per save, or you're looking for total save volume, this is where Peter Mrazek comes in. He's 22% owned, 2 wins in his last 4 starts, 2.73 goals against, 905 save percentage is slightly higher than his season-long 898. You can see the total save volume, 96th percentile there. Obviously, their team defense is terrible, so he gets shelled on a nightly basis. He is slightly above expected, which is good to see, and he is a relatively skilled goaltender. He did this all last year, put up a 910 save percentage on this team, so with an improved offense this year, this should be a better setup for Mrazek. He's only 22% owned, so he should be available for you in a 12-team league. They only have 2 games this week, so maybe not the right time to pick him up at the beginning of the week, but if you're looking for a spot start and he's available and you're looking for total saves, he could definitely provide that for you. Another guy I wanted to touch on is a guy that I've owned the past week or two, and that is Marc-Andre Fleury. So he's a guy on a really, really good team right now. You can see the team defense, 82nd percentile. He is a little bit below expected. He did get off to a slow start. 3 wins in 4 games is impressive, and all 3 of those wins in his last 3 starts. So he lost the first game and then won the last 3, 2.33 goals against and a 914 save percentage in those last 3 starts. So whenever they go to Fleury, he seems to get the job done. He may get in tomorrow on Sunday, so if you're watching this Saturday night, you may be able to get him in if they're playing Chicago and they decide to go back to him because that's where he played. Maybe a little revenge game against his old team, but if not, they only have 2 games next week, so maybe not the best time to pick him up, but for the future, this is a really good team, good offensive exposure. Their team defense is playing really well. Gustafsson is playing really well. He's at the top of this board. And then you also have Fleury available in most 12-team leagues, so just wanted to keep an eye on that. But in terms of guys that you could potentially add for this week, there's 2 guys coming from the same team that you could potentially add if you're looking for some volume this week. And we're talking about the Pittsburgh tandem. So I can't find them here because it's hard to determine if they're actually good or not. Joel Blomqvist is one of the guys I wanted to mention, 7% owned, nothing showing up here. I'm not sure, this might be a data error, but he has been playing pretty well. Last start, 2 goals against, 941 save percentage, and he did get the win. But they have been giving a lot more of the starts to Nedeljkovic. So as I bring up his, he started out injured to start the year, and it was Blomqvist net to run with after Jari got sent down. And he did a pretty good job in that relief effort. But Nedeljkovic coming back from injury, 15% owned. And you can see the huge jump he took from October 26th all the way up to the 2nd of November. Took a little bit of a dip here, and obviously his numbers are not the best. However, he has been getting the start volume. 4 straight starts before that Blomqvist win. The Blomqvist start against Washington, which he lost but played really well. And in that 4 straight start time, Nedeljkovic, 2 wins, 2.43 goals against, 881 save percentage is not great, and you don't want this team exposure. However, if you're looking for volume this week, these 2 guys are probably going to get 2 games apiece. Just considering the fact that it's kind of a split, you could potentially argue that Nedeljkovic could get 3 games, but Blomqvist will still get 1 as they do have a back-to-back. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention in terms of a volume play. Again, this is not the best team exposure. They've been underperforming as a team, but Blomqvist playing pretty well. He's 7% owned, Nedeljkovic at 15%. Now, before we wrap this up, I do want to touch on one other factor here, and that is the Colorado goaltending tandem. Justus Annunen has been trending in the wrong direction. So I did want to bring this up because a lot of you own him. He's 40% owned. Last 2 starts, 3 goals against in each game, 850 save percentage, 870 save percentage in those 2 games. But he has 5 wins in 8 starts, 8 games, a couple of relief appearances, but 5 wins in 6 starts this year. So he is the one getting the wins, although his save percentage is not great. He's right at expected. Team defense is a little bit better than what you would expect considering the struggles that they've been on early to start the year. And then I also had to mention the other part of this tandem, that is Georgiev. For whatever reason, he's still 71% owned. So guys have not been dropping him despite the fact that he is still decreasing. He did have a nice game against Winnipeg, however. So a 1 goal against in that game, 964 save percentage, and he's getting the start tonight against Carolina. So we'll see how that goes. But if you're potentially looking for a buy low opportunity, right now could be the time to grab Georgiev. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say he's the best buy low because look at this, 1 win in 7 games. Save percentage is atrocious, and obviously he is one of the worst in terms of goals saved above expected to start the year. However, if you're looking for a bona fide starter on a team that is only going to improve as they get some pieces back in the lineup, Nichushkin should be ready this week. Lekkonen's back in the lineup. Eventually they'll get Colton back. I'm not sure about Landeskog, but they're only going to get better and improve as we go through the season, and you could potentially get their starter at a really good discount right now. But with all that said, let me know who you've got your eye on this week. That's going to do it for this one. As always, I'll see you in the next one. Leave your notes in the comments section below. I'll try to get to as many of them as I can, but thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.